What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty P here with another episode of Steelers Touch and Under in our War Room series, our show that likes to put you in the minds of Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, Andy Weidel, and the rest of the Steelers front office as they look to put together a winning roster in 2024 and beyond, a roster that we hope will compete for a 7th Lombardi trophy. All right, so today it's a Monday, right? That's when this video is going out. It's also, I'm even recording this on my Monday night here in Australia in the future. Monday means mock drafts. But I'm not just doing a mock draft for the sake of doing a mock draft. I thought, let's look at 3 scenarios where the Steelers trade up, trade back, and remain the same, and what actually happens if you let that fall. We can't simulate the draft any other way than a mock draft. So that's what I'm going to take you through. So let's get straight into it. I'll try and keep this pretty high level. So I'm going to show you 3 different scenarios. This is the trade up scenario that I've got. Now, in the trade up scenario with the Steelers, we essentially have a situation where I moved up to pick 8. Now, it is virtually impossible for me to do anything other than that, is to basically just to do any other moving up is just really, really difficult. You give away way too much capital. In my mind, I gave up way too much capital anyway to get this close to a top round pick. I mean, honestly, trading a first away next year in 2025 and a second away next year in 2025 creates a real problem for you in next year's picks. It basically means if you do this move, if the Steelers trade up into the top 10, and I could have traded into 10 to the Jets, but I tried doing that a few times and I couldn't do that. I really, really couldn't give them anything that they really, really wanted there. I think they thought I was going to go nick their tackle again like last year. But the problem is, if you trade up in this draft, and I took a lot of mock scenarios, if the Steelers trade up into the top 10, they will be sacrificing not just 2025 picks, but then they're going to need to use 2026 picks. And then eventually you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul, and you're eventually going to have to lump the fact that you did this move. Now, the Steelers did lump that with Minkah Fitzpatrick, so perhaps not so bad. Also, you might have a player that's really good that you can trade eventually for a 1. So, you can't completely rule out that it's the worst move in the world, and the Steelers are in a bit of a win now if they want to win a title with Minkah and with Cam Hayward. Minkah's obviously going to last a bit longer, but Cam Hayward, has only got really this year and maybe 1 more year left. So anyway, I traded up with the idea that we're going after Rome Odunze. Otherwise, I could have not drafted it. You're not going to trade up in the top 8 to get Fuaga, but you can jump up into the top 8 and try and get Rome Odunze, right? Not Romeo, Rome. Right. So I did that. Right now, I traded that. I traded pick 8. I got to pick 8 by trading pick 98 in this draft in the 4th round, and trading the extra 3rd round that we got for Kenny Pickett. And I managed to trade a 1st and 2nd. I got pick 8 from Atlanta. As soon as I did that, Joe Alt was still on the board, and so was Rome Odunze. I think Terry Arnold was still on the board as well. So when I did this, I then went, okay, I looked at what Chicago had. I saw Joe Alt on the board, and I went, I'm willing, when they offered me a trade, to swap the pick 8 for pick 9 and pick 75. I needed to go get another top 100 pick. I'd lost one in 98. Ideally, I wanted to get something the next year, but you'll see I did that a bit later on. So then I moved up and I did this trade. I traded back 1 spot to 9. I got Rome Odunze, which is the guy I was only trading up for in the first place. He's the only guy I thought worth trading up for in the top 10. Jaden Daniels, I'll say, was on the board as well. Minnesota were making an offer, but it wasn't as good. And it gave me pick 75. So with that, I then scaled back to 51, and lo and behold, Zach Frazier was there. Very, very lucky in the 2nd round. So I got Zach Frazier. Otherwise, I would have had to go high on Cedric Van Pran. But it's also why I accepted pick 75, because he's picked prospect 73 with Pro Football Network's draft simulator. So I kind of thought if I get back to 75, even if Frazier's gone, I might be able to run the board and see if I can get Cedric Van Pran Granger at 75. Anyway, I didn't need to do that. I ended up getting Braden Fisk, and Michael Hall Jr., I will say, was on the board. I like Fisk better. That's where I picked him at 75. Michael Hall would have been a steal on some people's rankings, but I like Braden Fisk. So I went drafted him. Then when I got to pick 84, the Bengals offered me pick 84 and a 7th. If I traded those 2, I could get pick 97 and a 4th next year. Now, because we traded 1 and 2 next year, I wanted more picks. Equally, the Kenny Pickett, if he plays 51% of the snaps, his 6th rounder will turn into a 4th rounder. I'm like, I want to go get a 4th rounder. My idea was to try and get a 3rd, and I did get offered a pick around 75. I got offered some trades there, but it didn't really seem worth it. One of them was going to give me a 2nd in the next year, but I needed a top 100 pick. I needed to get better, and I didn't have a tackle yet. The problem was when I got to 75, there were no tackles either. Otherwise, I would have been willing to run the risk of getting a DT later on. So I didn't do that. So I ended up getting James Williams, who was the best linebacker on the board, can also play safety. More likely safety in my mind in the NFL, but he can play both pretty well. Then I went and got my tackle. I drafted Matt Goncalves out of Pittsburgh. I felt like I was drafting a little bit high, but I wanted to shore up the right tackle spot. We needed that. The Steelers have been linked with the guy. It made sense. We then drafted Eric All, the tight end. I do believe the Steelers need a pass-catching tight end. He was probably the best prospect on the board at this stage. He was rated 172. There was 178 there. And the Steelers, we still hadn't addressed cornerback. So then I went and got Nehemiah Pritchett out of Auburn, who's really fallen down draft boards, but still worthy of a 4th to 6th round pick, probably more like a 5th or a 6th. So I felt like that was pretty acceptable. There are a few other guys I could have drafted that pick, but I wanted the Steelers to get a cornerback on a rookie contract, and see how he went. So that's trade up. Is it worth it? I'm going to still say, even with Rome Odunze, Zach Frazier, and Braden Fierce kidding on all 3 of those guys early up, we didn't address tackle. We traded a lot of capital the next year. I don't like this scenario. I'm just saying that. I don't. And I would have wanted to pair it with a player, but that's not how they do their mock drafts. And equally, that starts to get pretty, it's up to each team, and there's a lot of good players still already traded already. I don't really see that being a realistic scenario. Had I traded up and tried to trade up in the 10, 11, 12, that could have been a different scenario, but it was what it was. I did try multiple mock drafts with trading up where I tried to trade with the Jets, and they just would not have it. But by the time you get to the Broncos, guys are gone. I did get offered a Broncos trade in this scenario, but I figured they were going up to get James Daniels, but I was too worried that Odunze would be going to the Jets and or Fuaga, and I didn't want to play that risk because the reason why I was trading top 10, not into top 12, was or within the top 10 or not 10 to 12 was not to get Fuaga. It was to get Rome Odunze. All right, the next mock draft simulator version is where you trade back in the draft. Now, a lot of people, when you say trade back, they're thinking you're going to trade back huge amounts of spots. I didn't need to. I traded back, and in this draft, Jackson Powers Johnson was gone, but I traded back from pick 20 and this play's been mocked a lot at 23 to Minnesota for Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. I traded back there and got 23, 108, and 177. Now, why did I do that? Because I think there's a lot of decent players, particularly in the trench positions, in the hundreds. And at 177, you can go get a late safety, a late tight end. You can do a bunch of different things there. Excuse me. So I did that. And I got Graham Button, who I think is arguably the best overall lineman in the draft because he can play all 5 positions with his best value there when I say overall. But he's the best center based on next-gen stats, combine testing. He played half the amount of snaps that JPJ has played there at center. He's becoming my favorite center prospect. I thought he was value at 23. That's where he goes in a lot of drafts. People trade up to get him in a lot of mock drafts. So that's who I picked. I then traded 51 for pick 57 and pick 125. I was like, nah, we're going to trade back. We're going to keep going here. We had 10 picks, right, in this draft. Actually, 11 picks, I should say, in this draft. So huge. I went after huge needs. I just kept trading. I was like, if we're going to trade back, we're going to do the whole hog. So they got Xavier Levitt, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, really good player. It was disappointing not to get him. But I really liked Jalen Polk as well. And whilst I love a lot of what Leggett can do, Polk can make some of the catches that Pickens makes. He's good all over the field. He's an all-round receiver. I thought it's going to be very unpredictable for opposing defenses to have to scheme for Polk and to scheme up against George Pickens as well. It's going to make life really difficult. And I like the idea of 125. So I did that. So I picked Jalen Polk. Then I felt like I needed a tackle and I didn't want to wait to the hundreds. So I went and got Roger Rosengarten. And now this was the first draft I'd ever picked him out of Washington. I do like the idea of the prospect. I think for him, it's going to be interesting in terms of like how he's going to go in the NFL. A lot of focus on Fatanu. But I also thought back to the whole Kevin Dotson thing and the fact he played with Robert Hunt and everyone was high on Robert Hunt. But then when you looked at the tape, there was a lot of good things about Dotson. I kind of feel like a little bit like that with Roger Rosengarten. And I thought this wasn't too bad. in terms of where he's picked. I think he was the 67th best ranked prospect with Pro Football Network, but I might be able to be standard corrected on that. And then pick Josh Newton at 98. He's 103 on their prospect list. I do like Josh Newton a lot. I think he's a top 100 pick, top 120 pick. So I was happy with that. I then went and got Jaden Hicks with 108 because I think it gives the safety. It gives the Steelers the ability to play Deshaun Elliott in the slot or play Jaden Hicks in the slot. I thought they could do another safety on a rookie deal. I like Jaden Hicks. I think he's real value at the start of the fourth. Well, I was really happy to get him there. Really, really happy to get him there. Then Mason Smith, who is rocketing up boards. Shannon and I started talking about him more. I brought him up with Shannon because he's on my radar because I knew he'd be worth about a fourth, but he was sitting there in the 6th round. And he started rocketing back up boards as people have looked at the fact he was like a top star recruit coming out of high school. Didn't play that well at LSU last year. Had a tough year, I think, the year before as well. But he's got perfect size, perfect length. You read a lot of profiles, they compare him to a Stephon Tuitt kind of type. I was like, he's ranked 108 on their list. He's gone from like the 170s, 160s, all the way up to 108. I like him as well. I've always thought he was worthy of a 4th round draft pick. So I was like, boom, we're going to get him at 119. Now, I then had pick 125, remember. I had pick 125 as well. So I basically moved that on. I moved that on for 129. So that 125 was what I got with the Polk trade as well. So I moved that for 129 and 167. Moved out back 4 spots. I did have to trade a 7th next year that was from Washington. But I still got Trice Knight, a linebacker out of University of Texas El Paso, a guy who I think is severely underrated in this draft. He's not going to be as much of a project as Mike Robinson, not going to be necessarily, he's not a day one starter, but he is a guy that you can develop over a year and he could really be something. Very athletic, can move across the field really, really well. Underrated because of the college he went to. Really like Trice Knight. So I went and got him. I then at 167, he's ranked 1 at 181, but everyone on this that's a sub for this channel, if you're not a sub, think about hitting that sub button, then you can keep up to date with all our content. I am about to launch my top position by position, top 6 per position, and including their day ratings as well in terms of day 1, day 2, day 3 drafting over the course of the next few days. I'm going to kick that off and that'll cycle through every day, sometimes twice a day for the next week or so as we lead into the draft and do some more profiles on those draft prospects. But anyway, Christian Jones is a guy I've always liked out of Texas. I am a Texas Longhorns fan, but this guy could play either side. I think he's going to be really good right tackle in the NFL. Underrated, always around big plays. Top 20 player on a lot of grades. If you look at like sacks allowed, like 0, quarterback hits, all that sort of stuff last year in college. Of all the draft eligible players this year at tackle, and even O-line, he's one of the best rated guys coming out. And he looks the goods on the tape as well. I then had pick... so then we have round of 167 there. I then traded 178 there for and 195 for pick 186 and 226. So that was a big move that I made as well. Now remember, I had got some of those picks through other trades. So I moved up and I got Eric All with the 177, 178 out of Iowa. He's a really good tight end. That's 5 spots less than what he's rated. I think this guy will go in the top 150 anyway, when all things are said and done. But he's a guy that can really play tight ends. Really good move. I think got Gabe Hall really late, who is a DT again. I've been super high on the whole draft process. He's a 3-4 DT. That's why he's rated so low. But again, really good length. He's like 6'6", early 300s in pounds. Definitely a 3-4, not a 4-3 DT. Interior guy. Again, a guy that people will be looking back on after he's drafted, particularly if he goes to a good spot that pauses to develop him and play him and develop him. But if he goes to a spot like that, this is a guy you look back on and you go, hang on, this guy, huge value. How did someone get him in the 4th, 5th, or 6th round when he goes? So, yeah, he'll be really good. And if there's a run on DTs, he could go higher than the 5th. And then finally, with my last pick, 226, I picked Tip Ryman, a big 6'6", 6'7", 270-pound tight end. I know we've got one of them already. I know I'd already picked tight end. It seems odd for me to double up. Sam Hartman was still going to be available at quarterback as a UDFA. But I like the idea of doubling up on tight end. Now, I did this even though Michael Pruitt was signed, because I think this is a guy that if he managed to make your roster, great. If he doesn't, fine. but you can put him on the practice squad. Someone's not going to go and nick him. I don't think someone's going to really offer that guy a contract. There's plenty of other guys floating around, but he did really well at the combine. And I thought, why not bring him into camp? He's a 7th round draft pick at that point. Good luck. What happens? But as you can see, overall, when you look at this, we've got a wide receiver. We've got one of the best O-line prospects in this draft. We still field tackle. We still field corner. We field safety and got better there. We've got 2 DTs that can play. We've got another possible starting tackle or a really, really, really good backup that can actually play on the right, unlike Dan Moore Jr. And we've got a couple of options at depth at linebacker, DT, and tight end. So that's the benefit when you trade back and you keep trading back. I had better prospect results before where if you trade back, I get more names that'll be familiar with you all. But that's what I chose to do in this scenario. And then finally, draft 3, where I was not allowed to do any trades. I didn't let myself do any trades. Now, I got offered loads of trades when I did this draft. I wanted to highlight 2 that I got offered. I got offered at 51, and I got offered at 51, 62, and 93 for 51 and 195 by the Ravens. If I'd allowed myself trades, I probably would have taken this because I already had Barton. I didn't have to worry about center, and Patrick Paul was still there. That's why it was really like I was like, oh, would I have taken this? But I probably would have to get another pick in the top 100. My belief is that you need as many picks in the top 100. I didn't do it. Then I got offered at 98. I got offered if I traded 198. If I got traded 98 and 178, I would get 108 and 129 from Minnesota. So move back 10 spots, but then move up almost 50 spots. Again, I probably would have taken that, particularly if I had previously taken the other pick, because I would have got more picks in the middle. I've already picked at 93, which was going to be a bonus pick. And then I'm getting I get 7 or 8 picks in the draft, and all but one of them are in the top 150. That's really good. That's a really good situation to be in if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers with the needs that we have and the multiple positions and the depth also that we needed a couple of key positions. Anyway, again, I went and got Graham Barton. JPJ was on the board. He's the 27th best prospect in the Pro Football Network's mock draft. I like Graham Barton better. I think he's a better online prospect. That's who I went with. I then was able to get Patrick Paul at 51, which I thought was an absolute freaking steal. And then to see Michael Hall Jr. there and Braden Fisk, but to get Michael Paul wasn't available there, actually, I lie. Ruka Horoho was, though. So that most people would have gone him, but I am a big Braden Fisk fan, and 84, that's an absolute steal in this draft. I then got Josh Newton, who I get a lot around 98 at the moment. I got Jalen Ford. He was the best rated linebacker as well. Really good guy out of Texas. 4th round, you're going to be pretty lucky to get him there. I then went and got Christian Jones, another Longhorn. I've just talked about him earlier, so I'm not going to go into depth there. But 178, he's all listed as 181 on their prospect list, so pretty good there. And then I went and got Gabe Hall, who I talked about as well. Again, it was tempting to go get a quarterback late there. It was disappointing not to get wide receiver, but there were no guys as I went through this that I'd be overdrafting a guy by 20 or 30 picks, and I just did not see the value in doing that. And that is my fear a little bit. If the Steelers don't trade and acquire extra picks or trade back in with a 2025 pick, I do worry that they're going to be able to fill DT, center, tackle, and wide receiver. I think that's asking too much. I do think that's asking, and cornerback. I do think that's asking too much. So we'll have to see, but I do feel like Omar Khan recognizes this. And hey, if you've made it this far, tell me in the comments. What scenario do you like when this plays out? Do you like trading up? Do you like trading back? Do you want them to remain the same? See how the draft falls to them with each pick? What sort of do you want to do? You let me know in the comments, because it's a really interesting situation the Steelers find themselves in this draft. They're picking in mid in every round. It is a challenge. They do have 4 picks inside the top 100, but if they get 5 or 6, the prospect or the impact of this draft could be so much more. Anyway, I'm Matty P. As always, go Steelers.